What's occurring, guys? Welcome back for some more Cali MK1 content. There is a couple of things that I really need to get done with the Rabbit. First one is I want to do a health check on the engine, do a compression test, check that everything is good inside of the engine that I can't see. Fingers crossed that's all good. If it's not, then I might change the course I'm on. But I really want to make sure I have good compression in all the cylinders, making sure that I'm not losing any compression through the head gasket, causing the cooling system to overpressurize and leak. Also confirm that the piston rings are good, making sure that I'm not losing any compression down into the block of the engine. The second thing I need to get done, I really have some wiring gremlins with this left rear. I don't have turn signals on the whole left-hand side of the vehicle. I don't have brake lights on this left rear. Weird thing is though, when I turn the hazard lights on, I have flashes on all four corners, so I need to dial into that. And I also don't have a temperature gauge. So some wiring I need to get done, compression test on the engine. Let's get into it. And I just want to say before we get on with this video, a big thank you to everybody that's subscribing and liking and dropping me comments. I've had some really nice comments on my last few videos. I want you guys to know it means so much to me. It really does keep me motivated. A big thank you. As always, keep dropping those comments, keep liking the videos, subscribe if you haven't already. Let's get on with this episode. So my plan to do the compression test is to disconnect the fuel pump inside of the car just so the fuel rail isn't pressurized, and then I'm going to disconnect all these blue HT leads for all the spark plugs, and then I can just pull the spark plugs out one by one. We'll do a compression test. Okay, mid-compression test update for you. Looking good so far. Front 3 cylinders, 170, 170, 175. And you see me, I keep disappearing off camera. What I'm actually doing is re-gapping the plugs. So I have my gap tool right here. I have my plugs. This one's a little crusty, got some corrosion on the outside, but the inside doesn't look too bad. And then I have my feeler gauge here. 0.028 inches or 0.7 millimeters. So just resetting the gaps, they're all a little big, but so far so good. Let's get on with the back 3 cylinders. So you started the first 3 cylinders. I had 170, 170, 175. So looking for something similar across the back, and we're all good. Check this out. So the back 3, 160, 165, 160. They're the fronts. That definitely seems good to me. I was expecting numbers a little bit lower than that. I'm totally happy with that. That gives me so much confidence in this engine. Like I said way back at the very start, I think someone had been in here once before and given it a refresh. It's got those blue HT leads. It's got that aluminum coolant pipe. So I think the timing's already been done on it. The spark plugs looked in pretty good condition. I did re-gap them all, as you saw, but yeah, giving me confidence that this engine runs good. I know the head gasket's good. I know the piston rings are good because I have good compression. So let's reconnect the fuel pump and let's fire it up. Just double check everything works. So the way I disconnected the fuel pump was there's a fuel pump relay. So I just pulled the relay out. That way no power goes to the fuel pump. So let's reconnect that. It goes. Where is it? Right there on the right hand side. There's the relay. So I'm gonna quickly reconnect this and we'll fire this thing back up. So everything's reconnected, fuel pump's reconnected, all the spark plug leads are connected. Let's see if this thing fires. So I should hear the fuel pump prime again. There you go, 1 second, here we go. And real quick, before we get on to all the electrical stuff, if you're wondering how or why we need to do a compression test and why I haven't done one already, here's why. The reason why I haven't done one already is it's really difficult to do a compression test on an engine when it's not in a running and driving car. I don't know of a way to do a compression test when it's just on an engine stand. You kind of need the engine in the car, the starter motor hooked up to actually crank the engine over. Now, why is compression in an engine so important? Well, now imagine that the cylinder is a completely, almost airtight cylinder, and when the spark plug ignites the fuel in the cylinder, it needs to be pressurized so that that explosion pushes the piston down. If there's any leaks in the cylinder, that's not very effective and you lose power. Now, there's two main ways that you're going to be down on compression in an engine. The first of all is the head gasket. So where the head of the engine bolts to the block of the engine is a gasket. So if the head gasket is bad, that pressurized air can get into the cooling system and can actually over-pressurize the cooling system, forcing it out of coolant hoses, causing it to actually boil and overheat the engine. And the second thing is via the piston ring. So the piston is moving up and down inside of the cylinder, and they have a couple of rings that go around that seal the piston to the side of the cylinder. If they're compromised in any way, again, that compression can leak past the piston. Well, then you really get no power from the engine, and you can actually get some oil getting burnt in the cylinder, and it can have a couple of other knock-on effects as well. And so how do you do a compression test? Well, the first thing you need to do is pull out the spark plugs, and the second thing you need is a compression tester. So I have my compression tester here. After you've pulled out the spark plugs, you put this hose into the same socket in the head of the engine where the spark plug plugs in, and then you see I have a gauge which actually reads that pressure. Now, it's really important that the engine doesn't actually fire when you're doing a compression test, so that's why I disconnected the fuel pump. You crank the engine and the pressure gauge measures the maximum pressure in the cylinder. Now, good engines should run, you know, at least at 150, in that 150 to 180 range. So you'll see all my numbers are at 160 or above. For a 35-year-old engine, that's really good. I am happy with that. Cool, so like I said, that's put a big smile on my face, give me some more confidence in this build. Let's get on to fixing those other issues with the wiring. Okay, first little problem solved. You see I've got a stick on the brake pedal there to activate the brake lights. Left rear brake light, right rear brake light. So that was a pretty easy fix. All I did was pull the bulb out, check the bulb was working properly, kind of scratched on the terminals a little bit to get any loose corrosion off, put just a tiny bit of dielectric grease on, and that left rear brake light's still working. So you can see on the right rear though, I can kind of make it go intermittently on and off. So I think I want to pull that side out and just clean that side up as well. Okay, so next challenge is trying to figure out this temperature gauge. I've come to the conclusion that the temperature gauge in the dash is broken. It's not working. So how I figured that out, the universal harness from Dave at TDC Shop has one wire that you wire directly into the temperature gauge on the cluster. And the way I believe it to work is the temperature gauge or the temperature sensor on the engine is just a resistor. So as the temperature goes up, the resistance goes down and the needle moves. So what he told me to do was to just ground out the wire, and that'll put 0 resistance on it and the dial should move all the way to hot. So what I did was I just got some repair wire, and I actually wired it through my multimeter so I know I had a good ground. and I've attached one end of that wire to the wire that's going to the temperature gauge in the cluster, and the other end coming out of the multimeter I can ground out on the chassis of the car. So I know that when I put the multimeter on the continuity setting, it zeroes out on the screen, which means it's continuity, but the needle doesn't move. So let me show you that. So that's not gonna make much sense, but this pink wire is attached to the wire that goes to the temperature gauge. You can see right here it's reading as 1, meaning no continuity. And then what I'm gonna do with this black terminal, if I touch that right here on a good ground on the chassis, the multimeter goes to 0, but the temperature gauge at the top there doesn't move. So that means that the gauge is making continuity through the chassis, but the needle's not moving. So needle is broken. I really need a temperature gauge because the issues I've been having with the coolant hoses and stuff like that, I really want to be able to monitor the temperature of the coolant. So I think what else I'm gonna do is, right now I just have a big hole in the dash where the radio was, and in the factory cluster there is no tachometer, no rev counter. So I think the plan is going to be to get like a nice block off plate for the radio, just a single DIN block off, and I will buy a couple of aftermarket gauges. One of them will be a temperature gauge, the other will be a small rev counter or tachometer. That way I can monitor both of those things. I get rid of this ugly hole in the dash, and it seems like I'm killing 2 birds with 1 stone. So not gonna get that done today. Fortunately, need to order some stuff. All right, so the next thing I wanted to tackle was the left turn signal. I ordered a new stalk. I just installed it, and check this out. That should be the right blinker. They worked as before. Left turn signals. Got one on the back. And we got one on the front. So success, all the lights on this car finally work. And I wanted to go take this thing for a quick rip, but true New England fashion, sunny 5 minutes ago, it's raining again now. I guarantee in 5 minutes it'll be sunny again. So hopefully we can wait out this little shower, get this thing out for a rip. Okay folks, I am wrapping this one up there. We got that compression test done. That all checked out, so that's a huge relief. We got most of the wiring figured out. I got brake lights now. I got left turn signals. Still need to figure out the temperature gauge, but apart from that, this episode was a big success. So as always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, and like, and I'll see you next time.